Hi all. Today is Tuesday, December 12th, 2017. I'm Dan Smigrod. I'm the founder of the We Get Around Network Forum. You're joining just for our daily Tech Scout, get the audio working, the video working, etc. We'll be officially live at 5 o'clock Eastern Time for WGAN-TV live at 5. We're obviously live now, but that's because I'm setting up. So thanks for joining, and thanks for your patience, because it takes me a little bit to get set up. So it's now 4:42 p.m. on Tuesday. So we'll start right at the top of the hour. So we're about 18 minutes away. So if you just happen to stumble on this video, fast forward about 18 minutes for the program to start. And then again, thanks for your patience as I get set up for our program starting at the top of the hour. Got to do a couple things here to get organized. I have trouble talking and doing at the same time, so I'm just going to do, and thank you for hanging in there. It shouldn't take too long. Almost there. Okay, just like that. Now I need my... And that should do it. So almost there. Hi all, I'm Dan Smigrod, founder of the We Get Around Network Forum. We're just getting ready for our program today at 5 o'clock Eastern Time. So this is just a little bit of behind the scenes as we get ready. So thanks for your patience, and thanks for tuning in. This is our daily Tech Scout to get ready for WGAN TV live at 5, coming up at 5 o'clock Eastern Time in about 15 minutes from now. So I did want... we have a great program for you today. It's Matterport Content Distribution, formerly known as Matterport Syndication Beta. And the question is that good or bad? And so that's what I'm going to talk about at 5 o'clock Eastern Time tonight, Tuesday, September 12th, 2017. Why don't I give you just a heads up on what the program is for tomorrow. It's actually really exciting. We're going to break from our daily WGAN TV live at 5 for a live stream from San Francisco. It's the VR/AR Association San Francisco chapter. The event is called Road to Holodeck, Light Fields, and Volumetric VR. And if you're a Matterport photographer, you were right in the midst of this, whether you realize it or not. So this is like a really exciting program. It's super geeky, but it's also super interesting. Let me just read some of the and there's all kinds of great speakers lined up, and I should say even Emily Ullman with the Hopscotch Interactive, who is a member of our We Get Around Network Forum community at Hopscotch. Emily enabled us to live stream the meetup of the VR/AR Association San Francisco chapter. So shout out to you, Emily. Thanks for making that happen. I'll read from the program. There's actually, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 speakers. And you can find this post. It's probably pretty high up in the We Get Around Network Forum right now, WGAN TV Live, Light Fields and Volumetric VR. That's the subject line. So from the program, it says, what's a light field, you ask? Several technologies are required for VR's holy grail. The fabled holodeck, that's from obviously from Star Trek. We already have graphical VR experiences that let us move throughout volumetric spaces, such as a video game, and we have photorealistic media that lets us look around a 360 plane from a fixed position, aka head tracking. But what about the best of both worlds? So we're talking volumetric spaces in which you can move around, but are also photorealistic. Does that sound familiar? In addition to things like positional tracking and lots of processing horsepower, the heart of this vision is light fields. They define how photons hit our eyes and render what we see. Because it's a challenge to capture photorealistic imagery from every possible angle in a given space, as our eyes do in real reality, the art of light fields in VR involves extrapolating many vantage points once a fixed point is captured, and that requires clever algorithms, processing, and a whole lot of data. So that program starts at 9 o'clock Eastern Time tomorrow, Wednesday. A super interesting topic for 3D VR 360 Google Street View photographers. And so it'll be live. Anyway, we'll be streaming that tomorrow, and that program will be in lieu of our typical WGAN TV live at 5. So it'll just be light fields and volumetric VR, 9 o'clock Eastern Time on Wednesday, September 13th. So we'll get started with our program. Our topic for today in about 12 minutes, WGAN TV live at 5, Matterport content distribution, formerly known as Matterport Syndication Beta. It's really excited to talk on this topic. Lots of reasons why you'd want to tune in. If your eyes glaze over of what that means, or you haven't heard it, this is especially for you. And then there's been tons of discussions in the forum. I'll point that out as we do our program. So a lot happening in this space of Matterport content distribution. Super interesting topic. So that's coming up just in about 11 minutes from now, 5 o'clock Eastern Time on WGAN TV live at 5. And always available to watch the programs at the We Get Around Network Forum front page. That's where we're streaming live. Just taking a look, there was one other topic I wanted to point out in today. Well, I'll point out a couple of them. They're so important. I actually tag them, post them, sticky them to the top of the forum. So if you haven't looked at some of those stickies in a while, Matterport to explode in a good way. Exponential growth coming soon to Matterport. I encourage you to take a look at those two, very much related to our program at 5 o'clock Eastern Time. We do have an emergency checklist for Matterport Capture app. Every once in a while, somebody posts to the forum, typically on a Saturday or Sunday, and says, "Help! I'm in the midst of a scan. This is what's happening. I need help. Can you help me?" And so over time, we put together this checklist. I think it's probably tremendously helpful if you print it out, put it in your Matterport service provider kit. With your camera, with your iPad, keep it with you always. So in the unlikely event that you're totally stuck and you don't know what's happening, go through the checklist. It makes it super easy to have a checklist in front of you. So while you might be a little bit panicky, maybe you're scanning far away from your home office, you don't have an opportunity to return back to the space, and you're kind of desperate for an answer. So obviously you can always post to the forum. Generally, somebody is always listening. Just mark your subject line as urgent when it truly is urgent, and generally somebody will come to your rescue. But that said, if you print out this checklist, it's called Emergency Checklist Matterport Capture app, and bring that with you in your kit. I think you'll find that tremendously helpful. And I do have another one pinned to the forum, an amazing magical carpet ride of Matterport. So, I know sometimes I can be described as a Matter baby because I'm always persnickety about what Matterport's doing. But at the big picture, I am actually very excited, about what Matterport is doing today, and in all likelihood, what's coming. As since we all somewhat live in the future, first quintile early adopters, sometimes change can't happen soon enough for us. So I try every once in a while just to keep going back to the big picture and know that innovation is a messy process. It takes a while, and we're all in the midst of something really super exciting. We wouldn't have bought our camera or thought about buying our camera if we didn't feel that way. So let's see. Just looking over some of the topics today. One thing that might be interesting for you is that today I'm actually coming. Our WGAN-TV studio is actually today at the Westin Atlanta Perimeter North Hotel. My wife and I have been kind of riding out the weather, which is now past, so anyway, it's not that far from where we live. So I went ahead and I went over early. I scanned the room with Matterport, but I also shot 360 photospheres every 2 feet using a Ricoh Theta S and HDR. And if anyone wants access to those 360s, because you want to compare a 360 platform of how that compares to Matterport, just private message me in the forum, and happy to give you access to it. All I'm looking for in exchange is that you post your results of the platforms that you do a test drive, is to post it in the discussion, labeled Matterport platform versus open platforms, or which should probably read Matterport platform versus other platforms. And so sometimes people are kind of making a decision about what camera to buy, and they want to look at different platforms, and you don't have some content, and so you're kind of interested in playing with the back end. So anyway, I shot some content, shot the space twice, so that we'd have a point of reference for looking at some platforms. I think really my motivation is I notice this is a discussion going on Cupix, CUPIX, and I think for that platform you need to shoot about at least every 6 feet. And so one of the members of the forum was expressing interest in 360 photosphere. So that was really my intent, to kind of give her content in order to compare the platform. But I'm happy to offer the content to anyone else that would like to play with it. Please don't use it for commercial purposes, but for practicing, playing, and posting in the forum, perfectly fine, so you can experience other platforms. So it's 4:55 p.m. Eastern Time on Tuesday, September 12th, 2017. Coming up in about 5 minutes is WGAN TV Live at 5. Today's topic, Matterport content distribution. Super excited to be talking on this topic. So let's see. Bear with me as I just keep doing some further tech adjustments. Okay. Can see our bananas and soda water up there in the event that the hotel wasn't able to provide food. We brought our breakfast with us to the hotel. How often do you do that? So anyway, for those that have been through the hurricanes and related bad weather, we hope you're okay. I know that a couple of Matterport pros had reached out to me, making sure that I was okay in Atlanta, and I am. We probably had the easiest of the whole thing, being in a very nice hotel. It's a strong, solid structure, never lost power. But I've heard from a Matterport pro that lost a 30-foot boat. I know there's been a number of Matterport pros that had to relocate. So our thoughts are with you as you get through certainly a very challenging time. So anyway, I did want to mention that, and again, thank you for those that asked about how we were doing in Atlanta. So no news, good news on that front. So 4:56 p.m., just getting ready for WGAN-TV live at 5. That's about 3 minutes away, and we'll get that program going. I appreciate you tuning in. I'm super thankful that you're a member of the We Get Around Network Forum, contributing to the forum, reading the forum, taking it all in. It's all about giving and getting help, and super excited to have you be a part of this kind of an amazing journey, which really just started out about 3 years ago when there was one of us, and then two, and then three, and today, 3,200 members in 104 countries, and even more visitors every month. I think about 10,000 plus monthly visitors. So a lot of people making decisions about what camera, platform, or third-party solution might be appropriate for them, and doing research. I believe on any given day, we actually have someplace between 8 and 9 times as many visitors looking at the forum as we do actual members. So that's very exciting that what you have to say matters to a very large audience of people trying to make decisions about either what camera or platform third-party solution is right for them. And I know when I started the forum back in July of 2014, I really want to say there was one solution of its kind, Matterport. What we now know today is Matterport Spaces 3D Tours. And if you check on the forum, I think you'll see that we have a list of cameras. That's one of the tabs, cameras. And there are actually about 70 cameras. And yet another one I learned of today, a high-end laser scanner, but that said in a low price of under $10,000. So starting to almost seems like at least every month, if not every week or every other week, seems like there's another camera announcement. So that's pretty exciting. Just space is interesting and growing. So we'll get started here shortly. I'm just waiting for 5 o'clock for WGAN TV live at 5 to begin. Topic: Matterport content distribution, formerly known as Matterport Syndication Beta. So super excited to be talking on this topic. And oh, by the way, I had a chance to watch a little bit of the Apple event today. Some streaming trouble from my hotel, but obviously super exciting things in augmented reality meets iPhone meets smartphone. And how exciting is that, seeing some of the demos. So really excited of how that's going to help all of us in this space. All right, so let's get started. Hi, I'm Dan Smigrod, founder of the We Get Around Network Forum. You're watching WGAN TV live at 5 today, Tuesday, September 12th, 2017. Today's topic: Matterport content distribution. Is Matterport content distribution a good thing or a bad thing? Also formerly known as Matterport Syndication Beta. So just 2 weeks ago, Matterport formally announced Matterport content distribution as launched. There's some things that have been activated in the workshop related to this. And this is, I can't get my words out soon enough, fast enough on this topic, because it's super exciting. I'm going to probably take you through 3 things today. First, why Matterport content distribution is a super exciting thing for all of us, extremely exciting and a good thing. I'm also going to take you through some concerns I have. It's good, but it's not perfect. And I do believe that there's a couple things that if Matterport would address, that I'd be super excited and feel like I was 100% on board, as opposed to maybe, I don't know, someplace between 90 and 95%. I would say probably for 99% of you watching this program, Matterport content distribution is 100% exciting for you. But there are some concerns, and I'd like to share those. And I also would like to just do kind of an interim step of when Matterport syndication beta first started and some of the challenges that we were experiencing, some of the things that we've identified in the forum, and then super excited to see how responsive Matterport is to the feedback that it received in the forum to get to where we are today. Okay, so what is Matterport content distribution, and why does it matter? So imagine that today that you have a Matterport Spaces 3D tour, and you're sharing it with a real estate agent or a client. Now imagine there was a way to automate the process of sharing your space in 1,000 different places without you having to do a thing. So that process has already started. Today, Matterport has a strategic alliance with Realtor.com that as long as you verify an address for a property for sale or for rent, then it will automatically post to Realtor.com, provided that you have either enabled all your content to be shared or your individual Matterport Spaces 3D tour. So that's really exciting, because if you think about all the places that Matterport Spaces matter and could show up, so far Matterport has announced 2 syndicated uses, Realtor.com, and then the second being the New York Times real estate section. Now, there may have been some changes in that, because when I look at the back end of what I'm about to show you, I don't see New York Times mentioned. That may be simply because I'm not in the appropriate zip code in Atlanta, and if you're in New York, perhaps you'd see something different. So I think I'd actually just kind of like to share my screen with you so you can see what it is that I'm looking at when I say that. So let's go over here. Take me a moment. And let me just make sure that I'm sharing what I think I'm sharing. I'm not sure I am. Okay, good. Okay, Matterport content distribution. Let's go back to that. Okay. So I think I'm on the wrong screen. So let me see if I can just make this a little bit easier for myself and get to the right screen. Let's try that one more time. Got so many windows open. Okay, here, this is the one I want. Okay, great. Okay, super. So right now I'm in the Matterport cloud, which you might think of Matterport Workshop. Sometimes they're kind of used interchangeably in terms of name, but this is kind of like, once you sign in at the very beginning using Matterport, you're probably used to, being at a screen here where you see your Matterport spaces, but I'm actually going to go up to the corner here and select Space Settings. And when I go to Space Settings, you can see if I scroll all the way down, I have content distribution, and I have content distribution is disabled by default. And that is so exciting to me that Matterport actually chose not. I mean, I think they got just a lot of heat in the We Get Around Network forum on this topic, because it's like, no, don't start out automatically sharing. Make sure that we know what it is that you're doing and that we want to opt in. So I actually have content distribution disabled by default. I don't want any of my content distributed anyplace else unless I actually, know about it. So let's see, I think Michael's joining us. Let me see if I can just enable him real quick. Michael, thanks for joining us, VTLV in Las Vegas. If you have questions, feel free to jump in. I think I have your sound off. So anyway, let me continue here. And then the second thing I wanted to show you, if I go to share screen, and I want to go into a Matterport space, just to give you an example here. So I go back up here and go into Matterport spaces. As I mentioned in our pre-show, I'm at the Westin Atlanta Perimeter North during the hurricane, which is now over in Atlanta. And if I scroll all the way down here for content distribution and I click there, you see allow content distribution to be shared. The account default is currently disabled. So I presently have accepted the default, which means this content will not be shared in syndication unless I do two things. One, I click here and enable, and second, that I verify address. So I come back up here to public details. If I go back to about, and I'm looking for my address, and until I actually, verify my address in here, that Matterport space won't be shared publicly. Anyway, I'm probably in the weeds here, too much detail for you. But the point is to first talk about some of the things that are good. When I think about Matterport making announcements, like they add this feature, they add that feature, they add this feature, I kind of think of that as a linear process. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You're making forward progress, but you are in a linear form. And the addition of syndication, Matterport content distribution, is like exponential growth, in part made possible by the Matterport APIs and SDKs. Even though they haven't publicly talked about them, they're obviously available and being used. And Realtor.com is an example of the API being used. So this to me is exponential growth. It's analogous to Apple iPhone enabling apps. Hey, Michael, I'm going to put you on mute unless you want to say something. Just wave your hand or send me a note in the chat box there. So I see you're talking about List Hub, and we'll come back to that. So where am I? So on content distribution is like exponential growth, which is kind of like counting. I wrote it down. It was 1, 2, 4, 16, 256, and then 65,536. So this is like adding an app store to Apple iPhones and iPads to really unlock the potential of a platform. So Matterport and adding content distribution means that over time, all our content can be syndicated to different MLSs. It may be restaurants, it may be hotels. It's not that I know anything. I'm just suggesting to say, if you're open table, imagine that, there's a Matterport Spaces 3D tour available for a restaurant. Imagine you're a platform that does wedding planning, and there are Matterport Spaces for restaurants and event spaces. So whatever category, imagine that there's hotels, and you land on a hotel website, and wouldn't it be nice that we actually saw a Matterport Spaces 3D tour? So Matterport content distribution enables our Matterport spaces to end up in all these different places if we give permission to do that. So now, and in fact, Google Street View, obviously, late out of the gate. I don't think that's Matterport's fault. I actually think it's related to the Google Street View API not being ready for prime time yet. And I imagine Matterport is all set, ready to throw a switch, and can immediately, and offer Google Street View, but in the meantime, they obviously feel that it's so far behind that they've taken Google Street View off of the Matterport.com website with any kind of visibility. So interesting. So if I had to guess, I would say first quarter of 2018. Before we'll even see Google Matterport publishing to Google Street View. But that is an example of content distribution by Matterport, and it's only going to get more and more exciting. So Realtor.com, Google Street View, and then there's probably a gazillion different platforms that content could be syndicated. If we think about some of the major use cases and we think about residential real estate, commercial real estate, buying, selling, leasing, then we start thinking about hospitality of booking a hotel, going to a destination. And so essentially we're all creating this amazing content that can be syndicated. Now, just to rewind, just a couple months ago, almost like a firestorm in the forum, because as soon as Matterport enabled content distribution for its first strategic alliance, Realtor.com, it essentially, I don't think they intended to do this, but frankly, it felt sneaky. So if you were to verify your address for your Matterport space, then all of a sudden, that essentially was you were giving permission for syndication to Realtor.com if it was a residential property. And frankly, there's a lot of reasons to say that that's really good, but there's reasons that it's not good. So when Matterport started, there was no global turning on and off. The default was on, and there was no individual turning on and off. The default was the global on. So the only way that some of us could actually redact content that we had verified addresses was actually send an email to Matterport and say, please take down our content. We don't have permission for that, or our client has stopped paying, or that's another opportunity for us to sell something, and you've kind of usurped us. So the good news is Matterport read all that feedback in the forum, and I'm so excited to say, with a few exceptions, Matterport implemented all the things we could possibly hope for on this topic, which would probably cover the majority of you. So the first is the global settings of being able to turn on and off all Matterport Spaces 3D tours for syndication. And the default, thank you, Matterport, is off. I think sometimes Matterport would, probably thought, well, oh, this will be a great thing and everybody will love it, and we should just automatically default to on. And no, it's not the case. I'll get into some of that. So the fact that Matterport has chosen to have the default setting is off is fantastic, and it means they do have some education to do in order to communicate with Matterport service providers of why they might want to globally change the setting to always on. And then the second thing is that Matterport enables us to individually change the setting from distribute or don't distribute. So that means if you globally turn things off, but you have a couple that you want to syndicate, you can say yes. And then if you've globally turned it on to yes, and then you want to turn a few off, you can do that. And then even better news is if you change your mind, you can change your mind. It'll take about 24 hours for the change to be effective. So I imagine that Matterport is doing a sweep once a day to check flags, whatever it is, are we syndicating or not syndicating whatever kind of content. So that's really good, because essentially Matterport is looking to us for permission. And Michael, I know you're on there. If you do have some questions, feel free to do the chat. I didn't think your microphone is on. If it is, let me know and I'll unmute you. Now, let me see just to check some other really good things here. So if you check the box of like, why does this matter? It means that you're going to get more views, which likely will translate into I'm reading Michael's note. I got it, Michael. So it'll translate to more views, which is likely to translate to more success for your clients, which is likely to translate to you being engaged to shoot more Matterport Spaces 3D tours. So that logically, I think, makes sense. Happier clients is a good thing. But for We Get Around Atlanta, for example, we want to be able to charge, monthly recurring revenue for some of the things we're doing. So let's say, for example, we go to a client and say, hey, that Matterport Spaces 3D tour that we shot of your hotel room, would you like that to be on Google Street View? Yes. Okay. We charge X number of dollars per month to do that. Not a one-time charge, but a monthly recurring revenue for that content to be on Google Street View, because we will be able to yank that content back if the client stopped paying or the client changed their mind. So this is, for you as a Matterport service provider, this is an entirely new revenue stream. And as Matterport adds more content syndication, and truly, I don't think there's really any reason that, maybe it's 5 years, maybe it's 10 years, that it's 1,000 or plus using an API. Maybe it's within 2 years. But the fact is that syndication, whether it's restaurants, travel, residential, commercial real estate, hospitality, film and television industry for location scouting, think about the kinds of, yachts for sale. All of a sudden, platforms that sell yachts, that you can automatically syndicate your content to yachts. Now, I'm not saying that that's happening today, but the fact that Matterport has put content distribution in play by leveraging its API, this just gets more exciting every day. And because Matterport has given us the option to turn on and turn off either individually or globally, that means that you have the opportunity to either say to your client, good news, we're adding more value. Not only is your Matterport Spaces 3D tour going to live in the MLS, it's going to live on Google Street View, it's going to live in a platform for booking restaurant reservations, for booking event spaces, for booking wedding destinations. So that's why I find this like really, really exciting, and the control that Matterport has enabled us to have over our content. They've made all the, what I would say are the right choices. I did want to just look at my notes here for a moment. So I still think, just for the Matterport folks, where it says verify address, I do think there needs to be a little bit more explanation, because it does. I know you're thinking, that if you just let us know the address, we can syndicate your content, but you don't actually say that that's what's about to happen. You have the default set to off, so that's good. But I think you need some explanation around that little button that says verify address for content distribution, and a question mark for what that means. So I think if you just add some clarity, that would be terrific. There are two major features that I feel are not within that Matterport has missed on content distribution, and I think they're really important. And I'm not sure that Matterport's going to change. So it really is an opportunity for other camera companies, platforms, etc., that see this as perhaps what I would think of as a weakness that Matterport has omitted. So let me talk about that. If you're just joining in, you're watching WGAN-TV live at 5. Today's topic, Matterport content distribution. formerly known as Matterport Syndication Beta. I'm Dan Smigrod. I'm founder of the We Get Around Network Forum. So those two things that I think are that Matterport has missed out on. One is enabling Matterport service providers to share in the revenue. I find it odd that we buy a camera, we pay a monthly hosting fee, we may be paying extra processing if it's beyond the amount that's within our account monthly, and then you make money off of our content. And I feel really strongly about this. I think if you're going to do syndication, and I think that's a great thing, there ought to be a revenue share, and that frankly would help us decide that we want to shoot more content, particularly the kind of content that you want. Because it may be that shooting, we may even get to the point where we offer to shoot spaces for clients for free because we know that we're going to share in the revenue. Now, I'm not making this up and blue skying that this is a missed opportunity, for Matterport, and I just come up with it out of the blue. There are already at least two platforms in our space that do revenue share. One is 360 Cities. It's 360cities.net. And you, as a photographer, have the spherical photographer, have the option of letting the platform working in conjunction with their partner syndicate your content. And if the content gets bought, then you as a photographer share in the revenue. And then another platform, Round Me, ROUND, excuse me, round.me, just recently sent me an email saying, hey, good news, we are now licensing content. If you would like to opt in, here's what to do. And if we license your content, then you will share in the revenue. So to me, that just seems to be the right thing to do, is to not just take our content and syndicate it. And you can say, oh, yes, but we now have the ability to say yes or no. Okay, to me, that's kind of lose-lose. If you looked, I have almost 300 Matterport spaces. I've opted not to syndicate that content because Matterport has not come back to me and say, hey, we'll let you share in the revenue. So on a case by case, only on as we strike deals with our client, depending on what syndication is available, will determine whether we enable syndication or or keep syndication turned off, or Matterport content distribution turned off. So I'm just saying, it feels kind of awkward to me that we pay for a camera, we pay a monthly hosting fee. In our case, we pay for the top plan on an annual basis, and that we pay for additional processing beyond our monthly allotment. And then Matterport makes money by syndicating our content to third parties. Interestingly, in the Realtor.com deal, I suspect in order to make that deal work, Matterport offered equity in the company or options in the Matterport in exchange for Realtor.com doing that. That's my guess, because there was an announcement about Realtor.com being an investor in Matterport. Realtor.com is owned by News Corp, owns Fox, owns 20th Century Fox Syndication, owns 20th Television, owns movie studios, newspapers, and my guess is that was a really important first deal for Matterport to do, and it was really important to make it happen. And I'm just guessing that Realtor.com, News Corp, was sophisticated enough to say, yeah, we'll do that deal, but we need to have some equity in your company, because as soon as we announce this, it's going to add value to your company, and it'll make it easier for you to syndicate content to the next company. So I just feel a little flummoxed that Matterport is making money off of Matterport service providers, and it doesn't feel quite right to me. I'd feel a whole lot better if Matterport said, "Good news, we're going to share revenue," and it doesn't have to be a lot, but it has to be something. So, because truly, you could almost imagine that, if let's say Google acquired Matterport, they'd flip the business model and say, hey, our priorities are mapping the world of indoor and outdoor spaces. As long as you shoot X number of spaces, we're going to rebate back the cost of the camera, and the processing is free. So, there are other companies that I think have a completely different take on syndication. And I guess that's probably three examples: what Matterport does, what 360 Cities and Round Me do, or what a potential acquiring company, which I believe would at some point would be Google, would kind of upend and change the game. Just like on our YouTube channel that Google pays us if we want to opt in for revenue share. So we're missing Matterport. We're missing the revenue share. I think you really got to step up to the plate and figure out how to make that work. And I'm not going to suggest that that's easy. I completely understand that you syndicate. However you try to calculate the numbers, but I think it's really important to figure out a way to compensate Matterport service providers for content. And I actually think that that's win-win. It's win because it means we'll all be that much more excited about being a Matterport service provider because you'll enable another revenue stream. Second is it's likely means that we're going to probably shift somewhat the kind of content that we shoot, because we'll realize that we can probably make more money in syndication when we're shooting restaurants, event spaces, businesses, etc. And it just feels right. So anyway, I know that VTLV Michael just passed me a link to say, hey, we've started a topic on this, and Matterport has some links on it. So if you look for the We Get Around Network forum post about Matterport content distribution, Matterport syndication beta, it's probably at the top of the forum right now, or use the search box to find it. It'll also take you back to the links for Matterport on this topic. So anyway, so that's the first thing, that I feel is kind of, missing the revenue share, and could have made us all, so much happier to be shooting content, knowing that, we weren't just paying for a camera, paying a monthly subscription, paying for processing, and then all of a sudden you're making money on top of our content without further compensation to us. So, okay, I've said it, you kind of get my point. The second thing that I feel is missing is that there doesn't seem presently to be any enable or disable by specific content distribution deal. Now, that said, the only content distribution deal that I presently see is Realtor.com. I don't see the New York Times real estate section, which was announced, and maybe it's just because, again, that I'm not in the zip code that I don't see that. But my recommendation for Matterport is, as you keep adding content distribution deals, you really need to enable at a granular level that on either globally or on an individual space basis, that we can opt in or opt out. and why does that opt out? Why does that matter? Because I think your thinking is probably, no, it needs to be, we need to distribute the content as far and as wide as we possibly can, and that's what's in the best interest of Matterport. Well, what's in the best interest of Matterport is having happy Matterport service providers, and one of the ways you make us happy is by enabling us to have control over our content, and so that we can do what we want with it. And why that matters is, we don't necessarily price that it's, one price and done. If we want to license our content and say to a client, we'll enable Google Street View, we'll enable Realtor.com, we'll enable Open Table, we'll enable in Travelocity, we'll enable whatever site it is, that we can have pricing based on either a la carte to a client, or that we're going to give them the entire Megillah. But we don't necessarily want to just simply have the content be published, by Matterport without our permission as a photographer. And then I think, the next thing is without the permission of our client, because if you publish content without our permission and we don't have the permission of our client, then we're actually in violation of your terms and conditions for using your platform, which essentially say that we, as the content creator, have the burden that we have the expressed permission of our client to have their content syndicated. And we may not. We may only have the use of that content for a very specific use. And just because we verified the address because we thought that made sense, so anyway, Michael sending me a note writing where News Corp owns Move Inc., which is operating rights to Realtor.com, and ListHub, who can syndicate listings. So, and these relationships are only get that much more complex. Michael, thank you for sharing that. And I think that that's the second thing that I asked for, is that we need granular control. Control is an operative word, and granular is really important. And I know this can create, a kerfuffle for you as you build this out, and you're thinking, the greatest good for the greatest number is publishing, to every possible corner of the earth. And as long as we've asked for a global okay that you can go syndicate your content however you want, then I think you'll lose out, because in some cases we're not going to want to give permission for our content to be syndicated, because we only want it syndicated in place A, B, and C, not D, E, and F. Or our client only wants it published in A, B, and C and not D, E, F for whatever reason. And the reasons don't really matter, but the important piece here is that we as Matterport service providers want control over how our content is going to be used and distributed, because there are other revenue streams for us. At the very least, if you don't give us the revenue share, and I hope you do, but you give us granular control over how the content gets distributed, then at least we, in conjunction with our clients, can come to an economic decision about what it is that they're going to pay or not pay. This is not like going into, excuse me a moment. We're talking about intellectual property, and that's bought way different than walking in and buying a bicycle in a store for some fixed price. Our intellectual property may be charged differently depending on how it is actually used, and certainly in the case of we get around Atlanta, we want to be able to have complete control over our content at a granular level, to say, okay, this house, this townhouse that we shot, we want it to show up in a location scouting database, but we don't want it to show up in MLS. So we want to verify the address so that it does get syndicated to the film, television location scouting database, or that it gets syndicated to a bed and breakfast platform, but it doesn't end up on realtor.com. So there are plenty of reasons why it matters to us and it matters to our client. And so that piece is missing. Now, I understand that, innovation is a messy process. This is, I'm super excited about Matterport content distribution. It just may be early in the game. They only got, one presently in Atlanta, one content distribution partner, realtor.com, and as soon as there are other partners, maybe that piece will automatically get turned on. But I feel like many of you look to me as your advocate, to be vocal, to talk about what matters to you. I just feel I do feel that responsibility to speak up to say I feel like those two things are missing: revenue share and granular control of our Matterport Spaces 3D tours. I don't want to end on necessarily a negative note, because I do want to bring it back up and elevate it back up to why this is Matterport content distribution, formerly known as Matterport syndication beta, is extremely exciting. It matters to all of us. For the majority of you, you'll probably just be completely happy as long as you can globally turn on and off syndication and and individually turn on and off individual Matterport spaces to be syndicated, and you'll be happy. But I think that there are those two opportunities. I did want to just take a moment, look at my notes, see if I was missing something else I wanted to talk about. Yeah, just one other thing that I really so there's actually three things that I feel strongly about. I've gone over two of them that Matterport can make changes and really just get bear hugs from the community on. Do the right thing. The third is giving Matterport service providers credit for our content. So, for example, and this was brought home. This is from one of our members posting at length on this topic, is to say, Matterport, you're using our content in realtor.com. Okay, it's great that we can give you permission to do that or not do that. But you're not crediting us as the Matterport service provider, as the photographer, as the scanner of that content. It just completely comes off. It left the Matterport branding in, but it didn't leave in the presented by We Get Around Atlanta, for example. So now essentially you're using our content to go publish it, distribute it in one to many, and hopefully 1,000, 10,000 different places that you can distribute our content. But you're not giving us credit. And why does that matter? Well, we'd like referrals. We'd like somebody to see our content and say, wow, that's really great. Who did that? Oh, that was We Get Around Atlanta. Okay, let me engage them, to shoot. Or, I see they're in Atlanta. I'm someplace else. Let me see if they can refer a photographer that does the same kind of business. And I think it's important to know that members of the We Get Around Network forum can certainly look at the Find a Pro map, find a Matterport Pro anywhere around the globe, and strike a deal with that pro to say, hey, I got a lead. If you give me X dollars, the lead's yours, and it's a hot lead. They're ready to scan. So there is a way for us as a photographer. Never mind that I'm the founder of the network. If I was just me in Atlanta and scanning, and that was it, and somebody reached out to me and said, "Gee, I saw you in Realtor.com. Is that you shot that house in Atlanta? I'm in Chicago. Is there a Matterport? Is there a photographer like you in Chicago?" And the answer is, "Oh yes, I'm happy to make an introduction for you. Would that be helpful?" And it's possible for the photographer to monetize that, or at least just be a good doobie to make the referral. Excuse me, one moment, please. So as the member in the We Get Around Network Forum community pointed out, was essentially you're using our content to sell cameras. So, because you got Matterport all over it, and then the first thing people, reach out to Matterport is, do you want to buy a camera? So essentially, we as Matterport service providers are doing the heavy lifting of creating examples that are useful in various, distribution places, realtor.com being the first, and New York Times, excuse me, New York Times real estate section, being a second for those that are in that footprint of the New York Times, if you're still doing that. And yet here we are, we're creating content, and our name is not on it. It's as if we don't exist. And the only thing that does exist is the Matterport brand. So as that one photographer who actually is quite prolific in shooting content, he has clearly said he is not going to enable any of his content to be syndicated, period, end of story, because he doesn't want to help Matterport sell cameras. And that, is VTLV, who's sending me text notes here in the chat window, is pointing out, those are sales leads for Matterport. Well, that feels so awkward that you're using Matterport, you're using our content to generate sales leads for Matterport. Give us a fair shake by enabling the sharing of the content creator. And if that's We Get Around Atlanta or VTLV in Las Vegas, the individual Matterport service providers, and frankly, that may even be part of your pitch to anyone that syndicates, must credit the content creator. I think right now it's as if Matterport service providers do not exist when that content gets shared with realtor.com. If I'm publishing a house for sale, and I've given you permission to syndicate it, and then you've syndicated it to realtor.com, and then somebody looks at that content, that 3D tour, and says, wow, that was cool. I'd like to do that for my listings. I think I could, as an agent, leverage that solution to get more and bigger premium listings more often. But they have no idea that I've created that. And they're probably, looking, at that, if the person who's looking at that content is probably local in Atlanta, and I'm creating that content, and you're not helping me connect the dots. In VTLV case, We Get Around Network Forum member VTLV in Las Vegas, Virtual Tours Las Vegas. He's got at least five other competitors. And so his content getting syndicated to realtor.com ends up being used against him to be either leads for Matterport, that and as I understand it, if Matterport's contacting a Matterport service provider, actually first I think you're probably taking that lead and deciding whether you can sell a camera or not, and then second, you're after you've done through that qualification, is you're deciding to dole out those leads. I would consider stale at that point, sending them to three different photographers, as I understand it, to go follow up on what I think is a stale lead, but nevertheless, it's the lead was generated from, in that example, VTLV, as opposed to the agent broker reaching out directly to VTLV. Because personally, I think that what's missing in the Matterport workshop is a field for the photographer. So you only collect one website, and that website is for the business. But frankly, there's two to tango here in this equation. One is our client, and one is us as the content creator. And since you only have one field in your database, you're only collecting a website, and I got to make a choice to say, am I giving the website field to my client? Yes. But why should I have to make that choice? I really want to have that lead. And Michael, I know you need to drop off, so thank you for your comments. They're tremendously helpful. So why should I have to make a choice about putting in the website either for the client or for We Get Around Atlanta? And then I would like to see, when you syndicate the content to anyone that's going to use it, that they be required to have the source, not only the name, but the hyperlink, back to, in our case, We Get Around Atlanta. I see this so clearly. To me, it's just it's a complete mystery about why the name of the service provider, and even more importantly, the web link that links back to We Get Around Atlanta, essentially, which doesn't exist. Again, there's only one field in Matterport Workshop to complete a website address. In fact, when I was earlier, I was showing that. I'll stay off that. Won't get distracted here. But the point is it would be really nice if you included the source of that Matterport space. In our example, We Get Around Atlanta, and our website, www, pointing to our We Get Around Atlanta website, and that the user of the content actually be required to use that field. And I don't think that's, I think there's lots of precedent, for this. You pick up any daily newspaper in the country today, that photography is being credited back to, even picking up the Wall Street Journal today, it may come from an agency, but it has that photographer's name on there. I want to know who shot that content. I want to be able to reach out to them. So that's my third thing that I think is missing. So again, the three things that I feel are missing is the granular, to be able to turn on and off an individual syndicate. So I can decide whether I want realtor.com or Zillow.com or FMLS here in Atlanta. Which ones do I want to turn on and off? I really want that. Second is what we've just been discussing about adding a field to the API to enable the photographer, also the presented by piece, to have a website associated with it, and then require the user of that content to provide that source. Because again, we stop, please. All we're doing is generating leads to either sell Matterport cameras or generating leads, as VTLV pointed out, to his 5 competitors. And then third is look at a revenue share. I think that's really important for this content distribution thing. So if you're just joining us, I'm Dan Smigrod. I'm the founder of the We Get Around Network Forum. You're watching WGAN-TV live at 5. Today is Tuesday, September 12th, 2017. Today's topic, Matterport content distribution, formerly known as Matterport Syndication Beta. So where I'd like to just finish up on is why I think this is a very good thing. So I don't end on perhaps a little negativity there, which I think is important. But I wanted to say it. We have a lot of people that that look to me as an advocate for the community, and I feel I need to advocate on these points. So again, on the big picture, and I think probably for the majority of Matterport service providers, real estate agents, residential, commercial space, travel, hospitality, as much syndication as Matterport can possibly do is going to be a good thing. It means that we're going to start to see exponential growth with Matterport as a result of leveraging its APIs and SDKs by doing magical things in terms of distributing content. And I think that's super important. And very, very, very exciting. And this is something recently that Matterport has come out of Matterport Syndication Beta, rebranded as Matterport Content Distribution as it's gone public. The first 2 cases of using the content, realtor.com, second case, New York Times. New York Times real estate section. I want to say there were a couple other trials, didn't last all that long, but were probably early use cases for Matterport APIs and SDKs. This is where exponential growth is going to come with Matterport, and I think as Matterport succeeds faster, that's going to be a good thing for the ecosystem. I think for many of us, it's still like pushing a ball up a mountain. We all thought when we bought our camera, it would probably be like pushing a ball down a mountain. It'd be a lot easier. I think some of us probably felt that when we bought the camera and we began creating Matterport Spaces 3D tours, that an armored car be lined up at our loading dock, from real estate agents and brokers saying, hey, you can't take our money fast enough. We want to shoot. That obviously hasn't happened. And we think content distribution will simply make our Matterport spaces that much more valuable because they'll start showing up in many places. I think, just one example coming, hopefully coming sooner than later, Matterport publishing to Google Street View. While it was announced for summer 2017, and now there's been some discussion by Matterport for winter 2000, actually just winter, doesn't actually attach 2017 or 2018 to that. So I think realistically, winter actually means first quarter 2018. Maybe somebody will point out what day winter ends, as to say, well, that's the day it'll happen by. But again, I don't think that's Matterport's, kerfuffle. I think that's really related to the Google Street View API not being ready for prime time. We're going to have a whole separate hour on that topic coming this Friday. We get around WGAN-TV live at 5, talking about Google Street View and the status of that. But the point is once it happens, and to put things in perspective, again, innovation is a messy process. Things take a long time to happen. Things can't happen soon enough for most of us, and so we're really eager for Matterport to publish to Google Street View. I think that's excuse me, is a great example of the view count and the usage. As we do individually, use Google to search and use Google Maps to search, and the majority of the planet are using these two tools. You got to be discovered where people are looking for you, and that means publishing to Google Maps. That's so important. It's just gonna dramatically change in a good way. It's gonna explode in a good way all of our businesses when we choose to enable Matterport to Google Street View publishing. It's that big a deal. So that's why I continue to be very excited about Matterport at a very big picture level. I continue to see exponential growth. I think when the APIs and SDKs are actually public and not used only by Matterport, but when third-party developers can actually take advantage of those tools, then I think just as we see Matterport content distribution exploding in a good way, we're going to continue to see Matterport explode in a good way as a result of APIs and SDKs made available publicly. And it powers things like Matterport content distribution. Anyway, so why do I get all worked up on this topic? You hear me. I probably spend half the time talking about why this is a great thing, and I probably spend half the time talking about the things that cause me angst. Part of it is that there are new platforms that are just about to be announced or have been announced that leverage Matterport Spaces 3D tours and don't have to be done through Matterport. So, just last week we were talking, with Robert Konenkamp with Aerial Looks about his relationship with Daiwukan, a Chinese platform that requires 3D tours for Chinese investors to look at properties in the United States. And so we don't necessarily want our content just to be syndicated willy-nilly, by Matterport without us monetizing it. And I think, the Chinese platform Daiwukan is a great example. If you're interested in location scouting for film and television, as we are in Atlanta, there's at least one platform that matters. Even today, I got 2 leads for one of my clients, about interest in using their locations for film and television production, and these kinds of platforms are things that we as Matterport service providers can make money with our content as long as we have control over our content and how it is used and what deal that we strike with our clients. I'm lucky enough that I get calls and inquiries, all the time from really interesting opportunities. And excuse me. So, I know there are other platforms coming. I also know that there are many mature businesses that are built around spaces, and those mature companies are looking for the next generation in visual storytelling. And as they discover Matterport, they're calling me to say, hey, we need to add 1,000 Matterport spaces by the end of the year. Can you help us? How do we source Matterport pros to do this? And so I really feel like we need, as Matterport service providers, to have control over our content so that we can decide whether we want to license our content individually to platforms that come calling on us, or 2, if Matterport is offering a revenue share on opportunities, or 3, of whether we're talking to a client. Let me give you an example. It'd probably be easier. And again, I'm not saying this is happening, but it's easier to talk about. So Open Table, many of us use the app to book a restaurant. If we've never booked a restaurant before, we probably will have some interest in understanding the space and the restaurant. I certainly can imagine, at some point, the equivalent of an API for Matter tags that enable us to actually book a specific table. Excuse me. So, how might that conversation work? So, one, Open Table might come to We Get Around and say, we want every restaurant you have. And for us to figure out how to work with our Matterport service providers to enable members to individually license content that they've either have already shot or will shot for restaurants. 2 is to be able to go back to the restaurant and say, hey, I have an opportunity to get you an Open Table. If you're interested, here's how I'm going to charge for that. Or 3, Matterport saying to us, hey, we struck a deal with Open Table. They want every restaurant that we have, on 5 continents. And here's how we're paying for the use. And I have no idea what that model is. I don't know if it's, it's based on pay per click, if it's paid on a, pay per serve, some flat fee. I have no idea. All I know is that our content is hugely valuable, and in ways that we either know or don't know, or ways that will be determined, or ways that we haven't even thought of. So in our case, We Get Around Atlanta, we license the use of our content in a very specific way, knowing that there will be other opportunities for that content, and we want to be able to monetize that. I happen to be in a proposal right now for a commercial office space, and I know that we probably have come in high on our quote to create Matterport spaces for 3 different floors and 2 different buildings, commercial spaces. And we may or may not get that project, but I know I can go back and certainly sweeten the deal with Google Street View, and I still might charge something extra for enabling that piece of it. but as long as we're in control of our content, I feel good about it. And so I feel like I don't want everybody to immediately give up all the rights and uses to your content simply because your option is only to either syndicate or not syndicate, or Matterport's new terminology, content distribution, no content distribution. Because I feel like if we don't get the right deal from Matterport to license our content to pay us in shared revenue, or granularly enable us to turn on and off individual opportunities when we want to syndicate, then I believe that there will be opportunities for us to syndicate our content, to license our content directly to platforms, whether they're platforms that focus on restaurants or event spaces or wedding spaces or hotels, or locations for film and television, whatever that space might be. That we've shot the space once and we have an opportunity to license it again and again and again and again. And that's why this whole content distribution category matters to all of us. So if you've made it through me, my hour of ranting on the topic, I thank you. But I think it's something that we all need to be thinking about and deciding whether we want to license our content or give Matterport permission for distribution. And I'm waiting really for them to come sweeten the deal, tell us how they're going to license our content, give me granular control over which ones we enable for syndication, for content distribution. And third, where's my credit for our company, and where is the link that points back to me? I don't believe that that's so hard to represent the Matterport service provider in your negotiations with those that are using the content. So we've covered a lot of ground today. I thank you for tuning in to WGAN-TV live at 5 on Tuesday, September 12th, 2017. I'm Dan Smigrod, founder of the We Get Around Network Forum. Thanks again from Atlanta for tuning in to WGAN-TV live at 5 on Matterport content distribution. Give me another moment. I just want to tell you what's coming up tomorrow. Just take me a moment. So if you're looking at that box over here to the right, WGAN-TV coming up, it's the VRAR, the Virtual Reality, Augmented Reality Association San Francisco chapter. We're going to be live streaming their meetup tomorrow, Wednesday, September 13th, 2017. And excuse me, the topic, holodeck, light fields, and volumetric VR via the VRARA San Francisco chapter. That is a hyperlink. I encourage you to click on it. Sounds like a super geeky topic, but it's actually something that you're doing. If you're a Matterport service provider, you're doing every day. And this is kind of the backstory to some of what you are doing and then what's coming. So I'm all out of words, literally and figuratively. So thanks for tuning in today, and hope to see you tomorrow, Wednesday at 9 o'clock Eastern time for the live stream from San Francisco. Thanks again.